Welcome to Story Sauce. I'm Sid.
And I'm Serena.
How are you, Serena?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm pretty good. What are we going to read today, Serena?
We are going to read a story that is quite famous. And it takes place in New York City, in the United States. Cool. And I remember taking it back in school.
Oh, you read this in school?
Yep, in public school.
Cool.
A few years ago.
No.
And it is called The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry.
Okay, beautiful.
$1.87. That was all the money Della had. And 60 cents of it was in pennies that she had saved, 1 and 2 at a time. She had done this by pleading with the grocer and the vegetable man and the butcher until her cheeks burned with the silent embarrassment of her poverty. 3 times Della counted it. $1.87. And the next day would be Christmas. There was clearly nothing to do but flop down on the shabby little couch and cry. So Della did it, which caused her to reflect that life is made up of sobs, sniffles, and smiles, with sniffles predominating. Della's apartment was very cheaply furnished. It did not look like the home of a financially comfortable person at all. In the lobby of the building, there was a letterbox into which no letter ever went.
Oh, dear.
And an electric doorbell button which nobody's finger would ever ring. Also on the letterbox was a card with the name Mr. James Dillingham Young written upon it. James, or Jim, as she called him, was Della's husband. Every day when he came home from work, where he was now earning a third of what he used to earn, he thought that he should probably shorten his name to James D. Young, since he no longer felt wealthy enough for such a long name. But when he arrived in his apartment, Della always gave Jim a big, loving hug.
Oh, that's nice. One day when Della was counting her $1.87 this December 24th, Della finished her crying and got up and put some powder on her face. She stood by the window and looked out dully at a gray cat walking a gray fence in a gray backyard. Tomorrow would be Christmas Day, and she only had $1.87 with which to buy Jim a present. She'd been saving every penny she could for months with this result. Jim's salary no longer went very far. Expenses had been greater than she had calculated. They always are. They really always are.
Yeah.
Only $1.87 to buy a present for Jim. Her Jim. Many a happy hour she spent planning for something nice for him. Something fine and rare and sterling. Something just a little bit near to being worthy of the honor of being married to Jim.
That's so nice.
There was a mirror between the windows of the room. It was a very cheap and thin mirror, and suddenly Della whirled from the window and stood before the mirror. Her eyes were shining brilliantly, but her face had lost its color within 20 seconds. Quickly, she pulled down her long hair and let it fall to its full length. Now, there were 2 possessions of James and Della, in which they both took a mighty pride. One was Jim's gold watch that had been his father's and his grandfather's before him.
Heirloom.
Yeah. The other was Della's hair. Had the Queen of Sheba lived in the flat across the way, Della would have let her hair hang out of the window someday just to let it dry, to depreciate Her Majesty's jewels and gifts. Had King Solomon been the janitor of the building, with all his treasures piled up in the basement, Jim would have pulled out his watch every time he passed just to see King Solomon pluck at his beard with envy.
So now Della's beautiful hair fell about her, rippling and shining like a cascade of brown water. It reached below her knees and made itself almost a coat for her.
Wow, it's so long.
Yeah. And then she did it up again, nervously and quickly. Once she paused for a minute and stood still while a tear or two splashed on the worn red carpet.
Oh, dear.
On went her old brown jacket, on went her old brown hat. With a whirl of skirts and with the brilliant sparkle still in her eyes, she fluttered out the door and down the stairs to the street. When she stopped, the sign read, Madame Sofronie, hair goods of all kinds. Della ran up the flight of stairs. Panting, she collected herself and then entered the hair shop. Madame, large, too white, chilly, hardly looked like a Sofronie. Will you buy my hair? Asked Della. I buy hair, said Madame. Take your hat off. Let's have a look at it. Down rippled the brown cascade. $20, said Madame, lifting the mass with a practiced hand. Give it to me quick, said Della.
Is she really going to cut off her hair?
I'm afraid so. Oh, and the next 2 hours flew by on rosy wings. Della ransacked the stores for Jim's present, and then she found it at last. It surely had been made for Jim, and no one else. There was no other like it in all of the stores, and she had turned all of them inside out. It was a platinum watch chain, simple in design, properly showing its value by substance alone, and not by needless decoration, as all good things should do.
Yes.
It was even worthy of the watch, which she and Jim loved so much. As soon as she saw it, she knew that it must be Jim's. It was like him. Quietness and value. The description applied to both. $21 they took from her for it, and she hurried home with the 87 cents. With that chain on his watch, Jim might be eager to check the time in any company. Yeah. Grand as the watch was, he sometimes looked at it secretly on account of the old leather strap that he used in place of a chain. When Della reached home, her excitement gave way a little to prudence and reason. She got out her curling iron, lighted the gas, and went to work repairing the damage to her hair made by her generosity and love, which is always a tremendous task, dear friends, a mammoth task.
Within 40 minutes, her head was covered with tiny, close-lying curls that made her look wonderfully like a disobedient schoolboy. She looked at her reflection in the mirror for a long time, carefully and critically. If Jim doesn't kill me, she said to herself, before he takes a second look at me, he'll say I look like a Coney Island chorus girl. But what could I do? Oh, what could I do with $1.87? At 7 o'clock, the coffee was made and the frying pan was on the back of the stove, hot and ready to cook their dinner. Jim was never late. Della held the watch chain in her hand and sat on the corner of the table near the door that he always entered. Then she heard his step on the stair down on the first flight, and she turned white for just a moment. I think she was nervous.
Oh, I'm nervous.
She had a habit of saying a little silent prayer about the simplest everyday things, and now she whispered, "Please, God, make him think I'm still pretty."
The door opened, and Jim stepped in and closed it. He looked thin and very serious. Poor fellow. He was only 22, and to be burdened with a family, he needed a new coat, and he was without gloves. Jim stepped inside the door and stood completely still. His eyes were fixed upon Della, and there was an expression in them that she could not read, and it terrified her. It was not anger, nor surprise, nor disapproval, nor horror, nor any of the emotions that she had been prepared for. He simply stared at her fixedly with that peculiar expression on his face. Della wriggled off the table and went to him. "Jim, darling," she cried, "don't look at me that way. I had cut off my hair and sold it because I couldn't have lived through Christmas without giving you a present. It'll grow out again. You won't mind, will you? I just had to do it. My hair grows awfully fast. Say Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful, nice gift I've got for you." "You've cut off your hair?" asked Jim, slowly, as if he had not completely understood it, yet even after he had looked and thought about it very much. "Cut it off and sold it," said Della. "Don't you like me just as well, anyhow? I'm me without my hair, aren't I?" Jim looked about the room curiously. "You say your hair is gone?" he said, sounding almost like an idiot. "You needn't look for it," said Della. "It's sold, I tell you. Sold and gone, too. It's Christmas Eve. Be good to me, for it went for you. Maybe the hairs of my head were numbered," she went on with sudden serious sweetness, "but nobody could ever count my love for you. Shall I make us dinner, Jim?"
Ooh. Out of his trance, Jim seemed quickly to wake. He wrapped his arms around Della. For a few seconds, let us look in the other direction as they embrace each other. $8 a week or $1 million a year. What is the difference? A mathematician or a professor would give you the wrong answer. The Magi brought valuable gifts to Jesus, but this gift was not among them. We will understand this more very soon. Jim took out a package from his coat and threw it upon the table. "Don't make any mistake, Della," he said, "about me. I don't think there's anything in the way of a haircut or a shave or a shampoo that could make me like my wife any less. But if you unwrap the package, you will see why you had me so surprised." Della's white, nimble fingers tore at the string and paper, and then an ecstatic scream of joy. And then, alas, a quick change to hysterical tears, which required all the immediate comforting powers of her loving husband. For there, in the box, were the combs. The set of beautiful hair combs that Della had worshipped for ages in a Broadway window. Beautiful combs, pure tortoise shell with jeweled rims, just the shade to wear in her beautiful vanished hair. They were expensive combs, she knew, and her heart had simply craved and yearned over them without the least hope of ever having them. And now they were hers, but her wonderful hair that should have adorned the coveted decorations was gone. But she hugged them to her heart, and after a while she was able to look up with dim eyes and smile and say, "My hair grows so fast, Jim." And then Della leaped up like a burnt cat and cried, "Oh, oh!" Jim had not yet seen his beautiful present.
Yes.
She held it out to him eagerly in her open palm. The dull, precious metal seemed to flash with a reflection of her bright and loving spirit. "Isn't it a beauty, Jim? I hunted all over town to find it. You'll have to look at the time 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how it looks on it." Instead of obeying, Jim turned down on the couch and put his hands under the back of his head and smiled. "Della," he said, "let's put our Christmas presents away and save them a while. They're too nice to use just now. I sold the watch to get the money to buy your combs, and now, how about we make dinner?" The Magi, as you know, were wise men, wonderfully wise men, who brought gifts to the baby Jesus in the manger. They invented the art of giving Christmas presents.
That's right.
Being wise, their gifts were no doubt wise ones, possibly bearing the privilege of exchange in case of duplication. And here I have lamely related to you the uneventful chronicles of two foolish children in a flat who most unwisely sacrificed for each other the greatest treasures of their house. But in a last word to the wise of these days, let it be said that of all who give gifts, these two were the wisest. Oh, all who give and receive gifts, such as they are wisest. Everywhere they are wisest. They are the Magi. Wow. It's a sad story, but it's a beautiful story. It's a very famous story. Maybe you've heard it translated into your language. But read it again. Practice the vocabulary.
Right.
Have fun.
It's a love story.
Sure is a love story. Wow. Can you imagine? Wow. Okay, anyway, well, we'll be back again with other stories shortly. Everybody have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.